Everybody. So for anyone who doesn't follow my TikTok, who just may know me from YouTube or from Facebook and have came on my YouTube or from anywhere else, I have 19,000 followers on TikTok, okay? And I go on TikTok because I'm homeless right now, and I go and I ask for support to pay for hotel rooms and food to eat and stuff like that. So people actually help me. I get a lot of support, and I'm very grateful for that. And so a lot of people say they want to know my story though. So I'm here to tell my life story. And so I've been promising for like the past 3 days that I'm gonna upload this video telling my life story. So I don't know how deep to go or where to even start. So I was born in New York. Okay, so when I was like 7 years old, I moved down to North Carolina. My mother and father got divorced, and then a few years later, she got remarried, and she got us all to change out. She never asked us, right? She never asked us if we wanted to change our names. So my legal last name is not Tamargo, but my birth name is Tamargo. A lot of people on TikTok come on there talking about his real name's not Tamargo, but yes, my real name is Tamargo, but my legal name is not right now. I want to change it back anyways. So yeah, so then that happened, and then when I was 16, my mother and my stepfather, they kicked me out of the house because I was skipping school and smoking weed and just not following their rules and everything. And so my father in New York, I had been talking to him, and he said I could go live with him, but they didn't allow that while I was under their roof. But when they kicked me out, I just called him up. I was like, hey, can I come stay with you? And he was like, yeah. So I went to New York, and my father was a little bit more successful than my mother and stepfather. My mother and stepfather, they were doing pretty good when my stepfather had a good job, and my mother would work sometimes too, but sometimes she didn't work. But now I don't even know if they still have the house anymore, because they've been living with her brother who owns this trailer, who came down from New York. That's a whole other story. But the last time I stayed with them for like a few weeks, a month or two, was a few years ago, and they had no water and no electricity in the house, my mother and my stepfather. But my father in New York, he's always been doing pretty much better than them. He worked for pool companies whenever he was with my mother and stuff, and then he made his own pool company, pool cleaning business. And then eventually, sometime when I was growing up, I don't know when, but he got this idea to create this, to sell the certain parts you need to fix your pool pump instead of having to buy a new pump. And nobody was really doing that. You had to buy a new pump because they don't sell the kits on the website. So he made his own kits, and he's been doing pretty good from that ever since, and he'll have his own side companies and stuff. So he's basically what we Marxists would call petty bourgeois. He's not a super rich capitalist, but he is a member of the capitalist class. Really the petty bourgeois class. He has workers that work for him and stuff. He owns his own small business, so he's not rich by any means. He was renting for a while in New York, and it's expensive to stay on Long Island, New York. So he's always tried to make enough money to live there. And he got a new girl with two new kids. And so yeah, I stayed with him for the first time I stayed with him. I think it was only like a week or two, or maybe a little bit longer, but not too long. And then he kicked me out, even though I was working for him, helping him with his website or whatever. I was working all night for his website, doing things for his website, and then he was mad that I was sleeping all morning in the living room where I had nowhere else to sleep. You know what I'm saying? Say they didn't want me sleeping on the couch all during the day. So then I was homeless in New York. Okay, this is where the story really starts. I was homeless in New York when I was 16 years old, and I had my guitar, and I had a dream of being a musician back in the day. And I had my guitar, and I was, you know, walking the streets, and there was a first actually when I was homeless. He lived in Rochester, New York at the time. Okay. I was born on Long Island, and he lives on Long Island again now. And I stayed with him on Long Island a few years later, and stayed there for a few months, and worked in Long Island before. But at this point in time, he was living in Rochester. This is before he moved back, like a year or two after this. And then, so I was homeless on the streets of Rochester. And Rochester's a pretty big city. They got skyscrapers. It's a lot bigger than the town I grew up in, New Bern, North Carolina. You know, I grew up, so I didn't explain that my mother moved down. Oh yeah, I did say she moved down to North Carolina and she married down there. Okay, so yeah, and then so at first they had a homeless shelter for teens in Rochester, right? So I went there, and I stayed there for a few nights. I made some friends there. We would go off and you know, try to pull little schemes in the city to get money for some weed. You know, and then I would smoke with the homies, and then we would go back to the homeless shelter. And then, you know, I started meeting a lot of people on the streets out there in Rochester. And one night they had a jazz festival on the streets there, and you're supposed to go back to the homeless shelter at 5 to eat dinner, and then and then at 5:30 you could go out again, but then you had to be back in at 8. You know. And so I was like, man, I don't want to go back to the homeless shelter right now. I just want to stay out and have my guitar, and I have my case out, trying to make money playing on the street, on the closed off street, you know, or nearby. I forgot if I was on the closed street somewhere nearby with my guitar out, you know, playing some music. And I was like, man, this is a life, playing guitar for a living out on the streets of the city. So man, fuck the homeless shelter, man. And so I did that for a while. Every night I was just playing on the streets in a day, just wandering around. Then I met some guy. I stayed with him for a week. I paid him like $40 for a week. It was pretty cheap. And I even got a dog. From somebody, and I had a dog for like a week. But then I ended up leaving the dog with the guy who was letting me stay with him. He just had a studio apartment, right? So it wasn't really a lot of space, and I stayed most of my time out on the streets. And I ended up, man, that was when I was on the streets of Rochester. That was the first time I did Spice. I met these few homeless people that were going around, and every time I see them, whether it was at the place where you can get a meal once a day or at the library or something, they were always rolling up like a little bit of spice, a little bit of tobacco, and then they would roll it up and they would put like a dab on the end of it. But spice is not good. I would not recommend it. So, and that was the first time on the streets of Rochester I did shrooms and acid. You know, one time I met some hippies, because Rochester, like I said, it's a pretty big city. It's not a big compared to other cities, but it's big compared to the town I grew up in. So you know, there would be all different types of people rolling through. They had every Thursday night at the main park in town, they had a big band playing, and hippies and other people would come through. Some hippies came through, and I got some acid from them, and I was playing the guitar for hours and hours. It was so fun. And so I was like, man, this is the life. I'm out here on the streets playing guitar, meeting all the people, all the big bands out here, all the people having a great time playing guitar. You know, I'm like, I'm living the life. This is the dream, you know. So Then eventually this guy tells me that Fish is coming to town. This hippie. He's like, oh yeah, man, Fish is gonna be here. You should go, man, or whatever. And he's talking about he's hitching a ride there. So boom, I'm trying to hitch a ride there, right? So we both got there, and it's this hippie festival with all these hippies. Before the show they got a whole row of the parking lot, like a little gypsy street market. Sorry if that song is that term is derogative. I don't think it's a politically correct term to use, so sorry about that. So but yeah, so then the show was pretty cool. I met some other hippies, and I was really captivated by these hippies who were following the show in their vans and selling stuff, and I asked to join them. The first night, the group I was trying to join didn't let me join them. They didn't say no, but they didn't have room or something. So then I just put my thumb out after the show. I got a ride to the next show, which was it was somewhere else next by, but then the show after that was in Chicago, and I hitched a ride all the way to Chicago. And on the way to Chicago, these guys stopped at this camp for a night, right? And they slept in their truck, but they're like, you can't sleep in our truck because we don't really know you too well, and I was 17 years old now at this time, and so they told me I had to sleep outside. I slept by the fire, but it got so cold I ended up looking for a place to sleep, and I saw a bathroom, so I went in the bathroom, right? And then some security guard kicked me out. He thought I was just a homeless person. I was homeless, but he was confused, and he just told me to leave. And I was so tired, I didn't protest. I just left and fell asleep outside the camp. And when I woke up, I went back to try to find them, and I told the guy what happened, and he said that they were gone. Some other guy who was still around, I forgot. I think he might have gave me their number. Somehow, and then he told him he was like, sorry bro, we didn't find you, we left. And my guitar was in their truck, so I was like, fuck. I gotta get my guitar. So I went on the highway, put my thumb out. I made it all the way. The show was the next day, and I made it. And then I met up with them in Chicago. I met these girls were out. These 20-something-year-old girls were out having a girls' night out or something, and I met them on the train somewhere. I was asking them about the train, tickets or whatever. They helped me get one, right? And then one of them brought me home to her crib, and we just chilled. And she was pretty cool. She was telling me about her boyfriend in prison, and she was an artist. She was painted, had all these pictures. And she helped me wash my clothes and some other stuff. Then she dropped me off near the show, and I met all the same people again. It was a 3-day show in Chicago, or 2-day show, I forgot which, but I think it was a 3-day show in Chicago. And then I joined this hippie group, and they let me ride with them in their vans for the rest of the show until Atlanta. We went all the East Coast all the way to Atlanta, near Atlanta. And then so after the show ends, these guys are all going different ways, and I ended up, other guys said that who were selling stuff said they were going to this other festival. So I was like, they said they had room, so I went with them. We ended up going around all these small towns outside of Georgia, and it was so funny. I was tripping, and these guys have this business, right? Pies and ties. They put a pie in a jar. They somehow make a pie in a jar. Oh my god, this is so funny remembering this. I haven't thought about this in a while. I'm sorry, this is too funny. And they would put like a tie, like a necktie around it somehow, and call it pies and ties. And they would sell these things. Oh my god. And so, this guy, it was like a classic classic like trippy movie. This whole experience with these guys, like the way it played out like a drama, it was crazy. Like the first one of the first nights, this guy's asking me to he's like, oh yeah, this guy's pretty off, man, tell me if you get any reading on him. And I'm actually tripping, and I'm like all in this, thinking about all this spiritual stuff, because I was 17 years old and tripping. And I was trying to like figure this guy out or whatever, and they're all talking about their crystals or whatever. The next day, I got this phone from Kroger, a grocery store phone. I paid for the service or whatever. I'm calling the lady trying to activate the phone, and I'm on the phone with her. I remember this so much. I was on the phone with her. And she's asking me for a name, right? And I was like, Jesus. And she's like, okay, come on, be serious. I'm like, no, I'm serious. But I'm kind of laughing because I don't know why I was doing this. But she was like, got super serious. She was like, I'm serious. What's your last name? I'm like, what's your name? Jesus. And then she's like, okay, what's your last name then, Jesus? And I said, Christ. And as soon as I said Christ, I said it just like that. I was like, Christ. I just started laughing. And then she starts going off, and she starts going hysterical, like, what's wrong with you, blah, blah. And she's like, I'm gonna have the tap lines get you or something. You know, this lines, this line is something tapped or something. I don't know. I was like, then I just hung up, right? And I called back a little bit later. Crazy times, right? So let me think now. So then eventually, a few days later, we're in Athens, Georgia, and these guys are arguing with each other. We go to this campsite and we do acid, and these guys give me a burger with blue cheese, and the thing is, I've never had blue cheese before. Okay, so he looks, one of the guy that I didn't know before that we met up with, you know, this other hippie couple in their van, a man and a woman, he made the burgers, and he says to me something like a line out of the Lost Boys. Okay, I'm eating my burger, and he says something about my burger, and I'm tripping, and I'm like, he's fucking with me. I was like, what's wrong with this burger? So I spit it out, and I put it down, like at this point I was really young and ignorant of the world, because during my teenage years, before they kicked me out, my mother and my stepfather would ground me a lot. I was grounded a lot, so I couldn't go hang out with my friends or leave the house or do a lot of things, you know. I just had to clean the yard, you know, do chores all day, you know, every day for months and months. So I was very young and ignorant of the world. So plus I was on this acid, and then he's like, oh, well, why don't you give that burger to my dog? If you don't want it, my dog will eat it. And my dog would gladly eat it. And I was like, I said this like so like seriously. I was like, I wouldn't give the dog something I wouldn't eat. Like I was really worried for the dog because of how bad this guy creeped me out. And this guy was like, what the fuck is wrong with you, and all this stuff like that. Whatever, right? So this whole night goes down, and by the end of the morning, I'm tripping balls. I'm like, yo, what the hell is wrong with these people? You know, really tripping out. And then the two guys I was with, they get in an argument. One of them goes off with the car, comes back hours later in the morning, and just starts throwing the pies, and then opens the trunk, starts throwing the pies and the ties into the river. You know, and just starts throwing all the pies inside, just breaking them. They're all wasted, all those pies in those mason jars. So they start tripping out. And I don't know what this guy's on, but he's not really communicating coherently. He's like, come on, and the other guy gets in the car. I'm like, dude, are you alright? What's wrong with you? And he's like, no, don't worry about it, just come on. And I was like, what? And I was like, bro, are you safe to drive this vehicle? Like this is me 17 years old saying I'm just like, I don't know about these guys, you know. And then he's like, just keeps telling me to come on. I'm like, nah, man, I'm good. You guys go. So then they left, and I was just out there in this campsite somewhere near Athens, Georgia. So this has been 20 minutes. I know this has been a lot of details. You know, I could have summed it up a lot shorter, but to me, it is nice reliving, reminiscing some of these memories, thinking about my story, as people have been saying, what's your story? So this is my story, and I'm gonna end it here for part one because it's been so long. There's a lot more to go over, but I said I would do part one like 3 days ago, and I still haven't done it. So tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow, I'm gonna have part two, and we'll see what happens next on the adventures of Austin. Currently in our story, this is my real life, like I said, just trying to be funny. You know, currently in our story, Austin is 17 years old, outside of Georgia, somewhere, after some bizarre, crazy, trippy experience with blue cheese and pies and ties. Later, I actually realized blue cheese actually does taste like that. I was like, bro, this can't be cheese. I was like, yeah, this. I was like, this is when something we said tripped me out, and then I was thinking like, I've never had cheese that tastes like this. This is not cheese. I'm like, something's wrong with this fucking burger. But the thing is, I just never had blue cheese before, and I guess he didn't know that, or I don't know. Of course, we were all tripping. So, anyways, we'll see what happens next. I'll upload a new video tomorrow.